then appeared to two of his followers on the road to Emmaus. They did not recognize him until they sat to eat together, whereupon he vanished. When they returned to Jerusalem to tell the deceased places, Jesus appeared among them all. They thought that he was a ghost and were frightened. He reassured them and spoke of his fulfillment of the ancient prophecies. Then he led them out near Bethany, blessed them and ascended into heaven. But at daybreak on the first day of the week they took the spices they had prepared and went to the tomb. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb. Jesus' resurrection. 163 But when they entered, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were puzzling over this, behold, two men in dazzling garments appeared to them. They were terrified and bowed their faces to the ground. They said to them, "Why do you seek the living one among the dead? He is not here, but he has been raised. Remember what he said to you while he was still in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and rise on the third day." And they remembered his words. Then they returned from the tomb and announced all these things to the 11 and to all the others. The women were Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Mary the mother of James. The others who accompanied them also told this to the apostles, but their stories seemed like nonsense and they did not believe them. But Peter got up and ran to the tomb, bent down, and saw the burial cloths alone. Then he went home amazed at what had happened. Luke 24, 1-12, New American Bible. John's account. According to the Gospel of John, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb by herself early in the morning while it was still dark. Seeing that the stone had been moved, she went back and found Simon Peter and the other disciple, described here in the Bible simply as the one Jesus loved but later defined as John himself. As taken from the King James Version, she told them, "They have taken away the Lord out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they have laid him." These three returned to the tomb and Simon Peter actually entered, followed by John. Finding the tomb empty, the two disciples went home leaving 164. Development of the Christian doctrine. Mary still there. While she wept, she saw two angels and then Jesus. She thought he was the gardener until he called her by her name. He told her, "Go to my brethren, and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father, and your Father, and to my God, and your God." She did so. That evening Jesus appeared to his disciples with the exception of Thomas, who was missing. He entered, even though the doors where they were meeting in secrecy were locked. He said to them, "Peace be unto you. As my Father hath sent me, even so send I you. Receive ye the Holy Ghost. Whosoever sins ye remit, they are remitted unto them, and whosoever sins ye retain, they are retained." A week later he appeared to them again. This time Thomas was also present and was convinced of his resurrection. John then states that Jesus performed other signs not included in the Gospel. But these are written, that ye might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God. John finishes with Jesus' appearance to the disciples in Galilee while they were fishing. Like Mary, none of them recognized him at first. It is here that John is identified as being the disciple whom Jesus loved. This is the disciple which testifieth of these things, and wrote these things, and we know that his testimony is true. Inconsistencies and discrepancies. There are many confusing issues raised by these accounts. Did the Romans seal the tomb? How many people first went to the tomb? When was the stone rolled back from the entrance? How many angels were involved? Did Jesus appear at the tomb? How did the disciples react when they heard the news? Why didn't Mary Magdalene, and later all the disciples, recognize Jesus after his resurrection? How often did he appear before ascending to heaven? Jesus' resurrection. 165. One especially serious discrepancy stands out. How many days elapsed between the crucifixion and the resurrection of Jesus? The Gospels of Matthew and Mark make it clear that the expectation was that it would be 3 days. But he answered and said unto them, An evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given to it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas. For as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Matthew 12:39-40. King James Version. The next day, that is, after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, Sir, we remember what that impostor said while he was still alive, After 3 days I will rise again. Matthew 27:62-63. New Revised Standard Version. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and rise after 3 days. Mark 8:31. New American Bible. Though the expectation was 3 days, according to all 4 Gospels, Jesus was crucified on Friday, and resurrected Sunday morning. This amounts to less than 2 days, and 2 nights. The discrepancy is obvious. Jesus was not in the grave 3 days and 3 nights as is generally accepted and stat-ed in Matthew and Mark. There is also some confusion about how early the resurrection could have taken place. In John's narration, it was still dark when Mary Magdalene first went to the tomb. In the other narrations, it was at daybreak, which is usually defined 166. Development of the Christian doctrine as the earliest light of dawn. In all cases the resurrection had already taken place. It seems clear that the common Christian idea of the resurrection at sunrise is not consistent with the Gospels. In any Christian scholars believe that the resurrection of Jesus was not a physical resurrection, but a spiritual one. For example, in discussing the views of the early Alexandrian theologian, Origen, Robert M. Grant states in his book The Earliest Lives of Jesus Harper and Brothers, 1961, p. 78. Origen's position in regard to the resurrection of Jesus, the cardinal and undeniable miracle, is not ambiguous, though it seemed so to literalists in antiquity. There is reason to suppose that he did not regard the resurrection of Jesus as physical, but at the same time he undoubtedly regarded it as historical. Karen Armstrong, scholar and former nun, gives us a different view of Jesus's resurrection in her The Bible. A Biography. Atlantic Monthly Press, 2007, p. 56. After his death some of his followers had seen him in visions that convinced them that he has been raised from the tomb. The Quran's account of resurrection. In my understanding of the Quran, all the righteous are alive at their Lord. They are waiting in the same paradise that Adam and Eve were in. The angels terminate their lives in a state of righteousness, saying, Peace be upon you. Enter paradise now as a reward for your works. Quran 16:32. Quran. The final testament. In the Quran, Jesus's resurrection will take place, along with everyone else's, on the day of resurrection. This is described as a specific eternal day that will come after this world has ended. Jesus's resurrection. 167. The horn will be blown, whereupon everyone in the heavens and the earth will be struck unconscious, except those who will be spared by God. Then it will be blown another time, whereupon they will all rise up, looking. Then the earth will shine with the light of its Lord. The record will be proclaimed, and the prophets and the witnesses will be brought forth. Everyone will then be judged equitably, without the least injustice. Quran 39:68-69. Quran. The final testament. It is from this death that the righteous will be resurrected. According to both the Bible and the Quran, death will be abolished, this world will be terminated, and then new heavens and earth will be created. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. Revelation 21:1. King James Version: The day will come when a new earth other than this earth, and new heavens other than these heavens, will be substituted, and everyone will rise up before God, the only God, the Supreme. Quran 14:48. The resurrection of Jesus on the universal day of resurrection is prominently featured in the Quran. There is just a general reference to the resurrection of all the messengers of God. Jesus is the only messenger to be mentioned by name in connection with that day. Here is the portion of the verse mentioning all of the messengers. God will gather all the messengers and say to them, "How was the response to you?" They will say, "We know not. You are the only knower of all secrets." Quran 5:109,168. Development of the Christian doctrine. Immediately following this, Jesus is given special attention. 5:110-120. Verse 5:116 specifically refers to his resurrection. On the day of resurrection, God will ask Jesus, the son of Mary, "O Jesus, son of Mary, did you say to the people, 'Idolize me and my mother, as gods besides God?' Jesus will say, 'Be you glorified, I could not possibly say what is not right about me. Had I said that, you would have known about it. You know my innermost thoughts, while I know not your thoughts. Surely, you are the knower of all secrets. I never told them except that which you have commanded me to say, that you shall worship God, my Lord and your Lord. I was a witness among them, for as long as I lived among them. When you terminated my life, you were the watcher over them. You are witness to all things. If you punish them, they are your servants, and if you forgive them, you are the Almighty, the Most Wise." Quran 5:116-118. The asterisk in the above quote marks a statement that is similar to Jesus' statement in John 20:17. "Go to my brothers and tell them, I am going to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." John 20:17. New American Bible Conclusion. As we have seen, there are many discrepancies in the biblical accounts of Jesus' resurrection. Because the Christian doctrine of salvation depends upon this concept, those discrepancies are a serious matter. The Quranic understanding of the resurrection of Jesus is very different from that of the New Testament. In the Quran, Jesus is resurrected with all of humanity and is held accountable like everyone else. Chapter 11. Personal Doctrine. One of the great blessings of living in our times is the relatively modern understanding that each human being is ultimately responsible for himself or herself. Of course, we can learn from one another, and help one another in many ways. However, ultimately we will be judged as individuals. Most Christian doctrines were formalized centuries ago during very different times. Indeed, only a few centuries ago, if you were an English speaker, it was life-threatening to be found even possessing a Bible that had been translated into your native tongue. The church determined what you were to believe, and to go against that or to dare to research for yourself was dangerous indeed. Thankfully, those days are behind us and we have the opportunity and the duty of finding our own truths. It is a daunting task, but an exciting one. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary website defines the word doctrine as a set of ideas or beliefs that are taught or believed to be true. http://www.merriam-webster.com Dictionary Doctrine. Retrieved July 9, 2014. Using this definition, each of us has the chance and the responsibility to define our own personal doctrine. I have shared my exploration of the essential doctrines of modern Christianity. I hope you will continue to think about and explore them for yourself. We have seen in previous chapters how the Bible itself gives us a great deal of guidance. Throughout the previous chapters we have also looked at some input from the Quran, the Muslim holy book. The Quran contains a great deal of information about Jesus and his message and specific Christian doctrines. But why look to the Muslim